Hello everybody, welcome to the 32nd edition of IDFA. My name is Jasper Hokke, I'm one of the programmers here responsible for selecting the Dutch feature films. And today we start, there will be the first in a series of 6 doc talks. And we're very happy and honored that our first filmmaker talk is with Oeke Hoogendijk. And Oeke has been here with multiple films. And this year she's here with my Rembrandt, which will have its big world premiere at Carré this Sunday. But we're very happy that we're able to talk to her in this more intimate setting. The talk will be moderated by Hans Berenkamp, and he will take over from here, but please give them a warm welcome.
So, we're going to talk English.
We have to.
Yeah. Welcome in this very special venue. This is a sort of sacred ground for the Dutch experimental theater. Many famous theater plays. You come from the theater originally, don't you?
Well, I did my education in theater.
You wanted to be a theater director or an actress?
I wasn't so sure, but I wanted to do theater. But then I finally wanted to make a film, and I just, because of the story of my mother, which we will surely talk about later, and then I just switched to making documentaries, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but still, we have a lot of things to talk about. One of these subjects I would like to talk about is the style and structure of your films, because I think that your theater background is still recognizable in the dramatic structure of the documentaries. It's observational documentary, but it's not like a fly on the wall that tries to capture reality as it is, but you sort of model it into a dramatic story. That's what I think. How do you see that?
I think that I'm still developing. It's not like a fixed thing, but I do think that my background in theater is indeed has a great influence on the films I make. And actually, I'm a bit confused at the moment because I think I'm going more and more to fiction, but I do love the documentary side. So I think right now, like my new film, my Rembrandt, is maybe something in between documentary and fiction.
And fiction, yeah.
I mean, the way the scenes are edited, I love the narrative of a story. So we're trying to capture scenes and, yeah, of course, to visualize things.
Maybe we should start with having a look at a clip of your most famous film so far, the new Rijks, about the reconstruction of the Rijksmuseum. And maybe when we have looked at this clip, we can discuss a little more about how you construct a documentary. Can we? Yeah.
De bouw ligt al sinds januari stil. Ja. Ja, het is gewoon niet normaal meer.
It's very sad. To go to the building and to hear the silence there is extremely it's extremely a very silent place now. Because you hear the lack of activity. Huh? Yes. It's very sad, this.
Wij hadden het idee dat er een positief advies van welstand zou komen.
Dus natuurlijk de eerste vraag van hoe ziet dat rooster eruit? Is dat een rooster of heeft dat een heel specifiek patroon? Doet dat iets met de tuin of is het een abstract rooster? Kortom, die vraag is denk ik toch ook nog wel heel erg belangrijk om het geheel te kunnen beoordelen.
Belde ik de woordvoerder van Stadsdeel Zuid.
Goedendag.
En die zei, weet je al het nieuws van welstand?
De bouwkundige uitwerking is inderdaad relatief abstract. Hè? Hout, is dat verticaal of horizontaal? Is dat best een groef? Zit er een naad tussen?
Ik zeg nee, ik weet het nieuws van welstand niet.
Zijn het grote platen? Hoe ziet het dakje eruit? Is dat zink misschien? En krijgt het dan een kraal?
Dus dat betekent? Dus dat betekent nu nog bezwaar.
Ja. Niemand had dat verwacht. Dus wij zijn naar Ronald gegaan. Die heeft de zakelijk directeur erbij gehaald. En de directiesecretaris. En wij zaten allemaal om de tafel, nou echt in verslagenheid van, dat kan toch niet waar zijn?
Consternatie en paniek. En hoe moet dat dan? En gaat alles over de vakantie heen, grote vertraging.
Het is alweer opgeschoven na de laatste keer.
Ja, en het gaat nog weer opschuiven, geloof ik. Dus...
gaat het weer opschuiven?
Nou, wat heb jij gehoord nu als laatste? Mij wordt het nu najaar 2010. Of is het nu voorjaar 2010? Ja, ik weet het, ik ben het gewoon even kwijt ook. Het is, ik heb besloten er ietsje luchtiger over te worden. Omdat als je daar maar per maand je gaat opwinden... het zijn geen dingen waar we wat aan kunnen doen. Het zijn allemaal dingen die met het traject te maken hebben. Of bouwkundig of met vergunningtechnisch.
Ik mis het museum ongelooflijk, maar er is natuurlijk geen museum. Het is toch een soort oorlogsomgeving. Er zijn geen kunstwerken. Het museum gaat om het tonen van kunstwerken. Ja, het is heel erg, vind ik.
Well, this was an enormous success. You won about every prize you could win with both the series and the feature-length documentary. And I think part of the success is explained by this dramatic structure. What we just saw first, you try to show us what stagnation is, what silence is, which is the most difficult thing to do in a documentary. And then a rhapsody starts of bureaucracy.
Well, that was indeed very complicated. But then, because how do you show that a building, it was about the renovation of the Rijksmuseum, and there were a lot of problems. There were no license to build. There were many things going wrong. How do you show a building where there is no action, no beweging, hoe zeg het? Movement at all? So then we suddenly, I will never forget this, then we suddenly saw the caretaker of the place who's chasing the pigeons. And I thought, looking at him and seeing the useless move he makes to the pigeons, that perhaps we could work with him and to show it by showing him the total emptiness of the building and the total being so stuck to project.
There's another aspect in this clip, is that the then director, Ronald de Leeuw of the Rijksmuseum, asks you when the museum is going to open. And you don't blink your eye.
That's what you learn by making film. I remember in the beginning I would always help him and tell him when his museum would be opening. But I learned to be silent then, and I'm very proud that at that moment, well, I really wanted to make a gesture and help him, but I really shut my mouth off.
The answer could also have been, you should know.
Yeah, but I always say let them hang them with their own rope. So I like you can see the moment that he thinks, oh my God, I'm doing this on camera. I can see it in the fragments.
You worked some 6 years on the new Rijks, maybe even more?
I worked 10 years.
10 years?
Yes, only on that film, almost only on that film.
Because you don't make a lot of films, but it takes a long time to get them right.
Yes.
On the other hand, this is also very much an inside job, I would call it. Because you are so embedded into the Rijksmuseum that also for that reason you cannot be called an observational fly on the wall, because then you would show everything you have found. Whereas I think that you only show what the people agree upon that should be in the film. You don't include anything in the film that isn't approved by the people you work with.
Well, that's not totally the case, because I always show the film in a preview before I release the film. So also this film was shown to the Rijksmuseum before, because I really have I care a lot about the relation I have with the main characters, and I want to talk with them before I release the film, because it's a lot of matter of trust, always. It's always about trust.
And if there's something that, a scene that you are very happy with and very proud of, and the director or the PR manager of the Rijksmuseum says, well, maybe not in the film.
Well, that's an abstract question, because it depends, of course, on what the case is. But like in this film, for example, there were a few things. So there were a few moments that they didn't like, and we did sort of argued about that, and then found a compromise, which we all were happy with, me too. Like the interior designer of the Rijksmuseum, who falls asleep.
Yeah.
During a meeting with the Rijksmuseum.
That's in the film.
That's in the film, but in reality, he fell asleep 4 times. Each time you saw him go like this.
You just only used one.
And then, no, 2. That was the compromise, so I was okay, I was fine.
Okay, I'll get back to that later, the ethical problems of what happens if your protagonists do something which is not in line with the original film plan. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
You can't write a screenplay for a documentary. You said that you wanted to make a film about the Holocaust. You wanted to tell the story of your mother. That's when you decided, I'm not going to continue with the theater, I'm going to make reality films or documentary films. Can you tell us a little bit how that's happened? And what did you find out?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, my mother is Jewish. She's still alive. She's 93 now. And
next week.
Next week. Oh, wow, you know that. And her story during the war, I think I'm a lot influenced by that. It had a great impact on my life. So that was actually the moment that I started. I don't know if I would ever have become a filmmaker otherwise. Because I thought there's no use in making a theater play about it. I wanted to meet. She was in a special group, which is called the Barneveld Group, which was a sort of elite group of Jews.
Prominent Jews.
Prominent Jews who were in a castle in Holland, but later on were deported to the transit camp Westerbork and then to Theresienstadt. And I think the impact was so big that I really needed to make that film.
You wanted also to get grip on this complex matter of survivor guilt, and everything that goes with it, and making a documentary about it helped you to sort of
it was
tame the chaos.
It was a tremendous feeling that something that feels like a burden. As a child, you don't know what's going on, you don't know what it is about, but you feel the heaviness of it. And then, as a documentary maker, to do something with it, and to actually shape a story and talk to people that were in the same position. That really, I think that sort of, not to be dramatic, but changed my life in a way. It was a relief for me to do that.
But in that film, you didn't show yourself yet. It was a sort of...
It was about that group.
It was about a problem.
And history, yeah.
About history.
Sure.
But not what it meant for you personally.
No, that wasn't in the film.
No. And then after that, you made a film about the Holocaust experience, as it is called. The way Auschwitz opens up to tourism, which is, again, a very complicated problem, because you want Auschwitz to open up to visitors, but you don't want it to be a tourist trap. And in that film, I think already more of yourself was tangible. Your doubts and your double feelings.
Yeah, I remember that I was reading the newspaper and I read that in Los Angeles there was a museum, the Museum of Tolerance, the Wiesenthal Center. And they made a museum there, and you could, as a kid, went in there and they would end in a gas chamber. It was an experience, like we have the Heineken experience, but you also had the Holocaust experience. So I thought, it's so strange that something that's so such a heavy thing for me personal, that it becomes like a Disney experience. So that triggered me a lot. And then, in fact, it was my own process, thinking process, that I tried to convey to a film. And that's how the Holocaust experience, the film, came to
Shall we
life.
have a look at the clip?
Let's do.
It was shown on television in, I think, 2000.
And on IDFA as well.
And on IDFA as well,
Yes.
yes.
Así, perfecto. Claude, venga, Claude.
¿Quieres?
At Birkenau, Nazis kept about 100,000 prisoners at the same time. Birkenau was several times bigger.
Muss man auch über Hitler sagen.
By Karl Fritz with words that there was no way out from Auschwitz. The only way outside was through the chimney of its crematorium. Let's enter the camp, please.
It's theater.
It's so important that people keep remembering. But when I made this film, I was showing, in fact, like an essay, the ways that we do that, and also I must say I started very cynical with this film, and during making the film, I became milder and milder because I saw at the moment that it's good that the attempt is there and that we shouldn't be too critical.
There's still no entrance fee.
That's good.
But let's talk about your mother. I think we should do that.
I know you like that subject.
Yeah. No, especially since you suggested that we show a short 4 minutes clip of your next film, which is entirely about your mother. And we've been talking about that a lot. You've been working on it for now 12 years or something.
At least.
Yeah. And I think when this film will be finally shown, people will be astounded because it's such a beautiful film, what I saw, the material. It's not ready yet, but maybe explain us a bit about your mother. What is happening to her and why is she so special?
Again, everything that has to do with my mother are films that I just have to make. It's not like a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice. It is always a choice. But my mother is, well, as I explained, a survivor of the Holocaust. But she also has I don't know the words in English, agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia, that's easy.
She doesn't
go out.
Go out.
And that's actually for a very long time.
Years, decades?
It was like that when I was born. Because when I was born, I had an infection and I had to go to the hospital quite immediately. And I was there for 8 weeks. And my mother couldn't come to the hospital because of her fear to go out. So that was the first moment that we split, let's say. And I was five days old or something like that. And so this phobia was very strong. And later on she went out because she had medication, so she could go out. And now I think for 20 or 25 years she hasn't left the house, which is funny enough getting the more and more normal, because when people get very old they don't go out so much. So now it doesn't feel anymore like a strange thing, but it was, in my youth it was.
And in this house she has about 5 or 6 television sets?
No, that's too much. No, she has 2 huge screens, televisions, and she has like 2 computers, and she's all the time, all the information is coming in. So normally a few radios are on and the televisions are on, both of them. And so she knows everything that's happening.
She's very connected to the world.
Very. It's amazing. It's yesterday evening I was on the day before I was on the radio, and she's the first one that will react because she's very aware of what's happening.
And she is particularly fond of these railway programs where trains...
Yeah. Well, that's funny that you started, because one of the reasons that I started the film was of one of the moments that I thought of a film was when she was telling me, she said, a certain moment she said, yesterday I was in Switzerland. And then she said, I was in Italy. And I was thinking, so she's looking at this television program, Railway it's called, and that's when you see a train...
Die schönste Bahnstrecke in Deutschland.
Yeah. And then you see a camera is in the first wagon, and then you can make a voyage.
A train trip.
A train trip. And that's only in the night that it's been broadcasted. And she makes a lot of... she travels by television, but taking that so literally that she tells me where she has been. So that was a moment that I thought, this is literature, or this is something that could be in a film.
And she's also a great fan of house music, especially trance.
Yes, that's why the film is called House Beats. It has many different layers. And she loves Chesto. And
DJ Chesto.
Yeah.
Maybe we should now take a look at this clip, and then...
Well, maybe we should... May I introduce her?
Sure, of course.
Because my mother, her living room, she has a 3-floor house, but she lives in the living room and sleeps in the living room. And at a certain point it was kind of intrusive that I was standing there with a crew around her bed, in fact. So that's where the fragment is about, that how to solve that problem, how to solve being so intrusive in a home of somebody who's a hermit. You say that, hermit?
Yeah, hermit, yeah.
Hermit. So how to solve that problem as a filmmaker. And this is what happened.
Okay.
Kut papier.
Weet je wat ik ook voor je heb?
Wat dan? Ik moet het eerst invullen.
Kijk. Het stond niet op je lijstje, maar volgens mij is dat lekker. Koolrabi.
Och, dat had ik hem willen vragen. Jezus, wat goed met jou. Met goulash. We maken hele lekkere goulash en Westerburg. En het regen zat het alles vies. Maar die goulash uit Westerburg, zit die gauw meteen.
Brieven denk ik dan maar hier te gaan doen, hè?
Aan die tafel. Ja, dan moeten we wel even opruimen.
Doe ik even, ja.
Moeten we even alles netjes weg hebben.
Ja.
Ik weet het helemaal niet. Ik moet wel even wat overwinnen.
Wat zeg je, mam?
Je moet wel even wat overwinnen.
Je hebt er geen zin in, volgens mij. Werkt een beetje.
Ik vind het alles vreselijk. Ik zal nog eens uitvogelen wat het is. Een enorme innerlijke weerstand. En ik weet het niet, het is allemaal zo... Nee, dat is zo stom. Ja, het doet er toch weer wat. Ik weet te veel de diepte in, dat moet ik ook niet doen.
Nee.
Ah. Ik weet het niet. Ik ben... Vergeet niet dat ik denk dat ik, als ik heel eerlijk ben, ik heb een verschrikkelijke sterke eigen wil, wens en visie op dingen. En ik moet me helemaal toch proberen in het pad van jou te lopen.
Wat zou jij dan willen? Want dat is die vraag wel steeds aan mij, wat we moeten doen. Dus als jij...
Nee, omdat ik me...
Jij mag het ook zeggen.
Nou, dat heb ik je wel eens gezegd. Dan moet je een dinges neerzetten en een webcam en continu opnemen en er allemaal stukken uithalen. Dan krijg je mezelf. Ligt uit. Gewoon niks verschillen. Oh, ik moet even bij mezelf zijn. Gadverdamme. Nee, dat weet je nou. Niet zo gauw. Als ik een mes had, dan prikte ik hem mezelf. Dat stomme gedoe van al die mensen. Oh, shit. Oh, ik wil ook vleugels had. Ja, als ik zo niet al die gebreken had en dingen, dat je dan even weg kon vliegen naar iets heel anders toe. En dan liefst iets wat je niet zozeer kent of mogen. Nee, zo niet in het overliggende toe, met pijnplekken. Nee, waar ik het even helemaal opnieuw kon maken. En inderdaad iets zonnigs. Dat zou ik ook niet willen. Nee, dat zou ik ook niet willen. Ik zou niet weten wat ik zou willen. Liever de sneeuw in de bergen.
Als er dus nog een opgenomen. Het zoeken naar overlevenden wordt nu moeilijk, omdat het niet helemaal duidelijk is wie er allemaal moet helpen.
One of the problems we're having is that multiple contractors have been working this project. Each one of these contractors has their own foreperson. They have their own employee lists. So being able to sort all of that out is going to take some time. And right now the contractors are working with the authorities to confirm the number and identity.
It's the first time I, with an audience, look at this, so it's the film isn't finished yet. There's no sound mix. There's nothing. But
it's very impressive. I mean, I think it is. I've never seen anything like this before.
You mean that you see with a webcam?
The invasion of someone's privacy.
Invasion, you say?
Yes.
Do you think so?
Yeah, but it's not negative. I don't mean it as a negative thing. I think documentaries try to show us what is inside people's heads, partly. And that's the most difficult thing to do, and here you really get into a complicated head.
Yes, and a head that's between four walls. So that's very, very intimate, to say the least.
She will probably never see the film.
I'm afraid that when she would, it would really become very complicated, because she will be. My mother has a very strong will and a very strong vision. So I try to explain her that I can only make the film I can make about her, and I cannot make the film she wants to be made on her. So it has to be my vision on her life.
But that is in every documentary the case, is that the film belongs to the director of the film and not to the subject. And that is always a possible source of friction. We'll talk about that later, maybe with Rembrandt. But first, about if you construct a film like this, maybe first let's talk about the production. This is a sort of film that you don't write a screenplay for and go to a film fund or a broadcaster.
I did write a scenario for this film. And it was actually during writing that scenario that I already felt how important it was for me to make the film, because I always have a difficult time writing scripts, but this one came out just like that. I started writing, and it was done in, I think, a few weeks, and I got also, it was subsidized also by the media funds in that time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a huge budget. But I tried everything with this film. I filmed myself, although I'm not a great camera person. And I tried many cameramans and women, but she always threw them out. So she said, I don't want him to come back again. And then I had to take another one. And so I think we had 4 different people doing it, filming it. And then finally I decided to do it myself, and the webcam came in.
And she suggested that you use a webcam.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did she look at the material you collected?
No, she didn't.
You didn't let her?
No, I don't think that would be a good idea. No. And I think it will be very difficult to do that.
Editing is also very important for you, because not only in this film but also in the Rijksmuseum and in the Rembrandt film, in a classical Frederick Wiseman or Don Pennebaker film, there is not a lot of editing. You watch a scene for a long time and then you switch to another scene. But you sort of construct a reality in the editing. In a way, you could say that a documentary is always constructed in the editing, but in your films, maybe even more so. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. That's why the editing always takes so terribly long. We have the last film is 8 months. We did the editing, which
the Rembrandt film.
Yeah, it's quite unusual, I think. Well, I think the editing is the most important. Well, it's not the most important, but it's really where you construct your film and where you make the narrative, and that's the hardest part, I think.
And you can also lie in editing or combine things that aren't really connected.
Well, what Johan van der Keuken, our famous filmmaker, always says is, you lie the truth. because the truth doesn't exist. But what you can do is, the story you want to convey, you can construct. But I always want to convey a story that is very close to reality, because there's no use in fantasizing something about something that's not at all true.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the real, the creativity comes out, to make a good story.
And you're always sitting next to the editor?
Well, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments that he throws me out.
Yeah.
He says, "No, please go away," because he needs to, to do what I ask him, and I start looking too much on his fingers. But yeah, most of the time I will be there. Yes.
Do you regret that you don't do the camera yourself? Because that's always, for me, the most difficult thing about making a documentary, is that the director is not in charge of the camera, or he or she is in charge, but remote control. You have to tell the camera person what to look at and how to look at it.
Yeah, that's what I think is very complicated in making documentaries, that you see something, and the blink of your eye that you see it is the way you would want your cameraman to film it. And the moment you have to go over to your cameraman and tell him what you saw, you're most of the time too late.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why you always have the feeling that you're running behind the facts and running behind, and that can be very frustrated sometimes. But there are also moments that my cameraman sees things that I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love the collaboration.
And you work mostly with the same camera person?
Always.
Yeah, always, yeah.
Only when he's not available, because my films are over such a period, like 10 years, and so you can't expect cameramen to sit and wait for my phone call for a shoot. So, but Sander Snoep is my first cameraman.
He is your eyes.
He's my camera eyes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But in the editing, you are in charge, and you make the decisions, or can you also delegate that to an editor? Because I know you like to be in charge. You're someone who likes control.
I like control, but the way we work in our genre of documentaries, it's not like there's a boss. Mm-hmm. That's what I sometimes try to explain to people from abroad, and I think in some countries that's different. But if I would say to my editor, we're going to do this my way, and I want it this way, that might not be very good for the way we work. Mm-hmm. So it's usually a lot of discussion. And
also during the shooting, you discuss a lot.
Well, not during, but before we go.
Okay, yeah.
So I have a good talk with Sander Snoep, and then we decide how to approach a scene. And then during the shoot, you cannot really have a lot of conversation, because that wouldn't work. But in the edit room, there's a lot of discussion, and it's not always easy.
And then there is the relationship with the people in front of the camera. We already talked about that a little bit. You in interviews, you seem to be able to seduce people, especially powerful men.
Powerful men.
To say and show us things that they normally don't easily let go of. Are you aware of your charm, or whatever it is that makes people do that?
Yes.
How do you do it?
I think that for me, making film is also a lot about them. Mm-hmm. So I may say I invest really a lot of time and a lot of love into that relation. So when I'm working with people, most of the time there's a sort of friendship coming You know, it's not just I come in and I do an interview and then I leave. So it's about relations that are during for years. I mean, that's why the head of the Rijksmuseum asks me when will my museum open again. That's because of the relationship that's there. And that's, I think, really my way of working with people. And like what we talked about, there is a lot of, the moment I'm interviewing, there's a lot of, how to say, I feel a lot of love for the person I'm interviewing. And I think that's some magic thing that between people can happen, that people tell me things they maybe wouldn't tell normally.
And is that only during the shooting, or do you want that to continue after the, when the film is finished, they still have to be satisfied with you? You want to please them?
I wouldn't call it pleasing. It's more like I feel a responsibility towards them. And I have a relation with them. So I don't want to make enemies by making films. And I'm not always sure whether that's the right attitude, but I just don't like that. So I will always talk with them also after the film.
Because that's, maybe we should start talking about the Rembrandt film. One of the main characters is Jan Six, who discovered 1 or 2 Rembrandts and is at a certain moment being sort of expelled, outcast by the rest of the art world, since he did some things that, let's not go into the details, but he is ostracized.
Well, he's accused of...
He is accused of fraud.
Yeah, that's what's happening. What was happening right in front of our eyes, yes.
So you cannot omit it from your documentary, but you also want to keep this friendship and special relationship with the main character intact.
I think I would put it differently, because I think as soon as you work with somebody for years, because we worked 4 years together on this film, and somebody is really giving me access to a lot, that's so much confidence that's given to you, that it would be so easy to, you know, to edit the film in a way that he's really like
a villain.
Yeah, it would be so easy. I mean, people said terrible things about him. We even had a very hard time trying to keep his head above the water, trying to keep him sympathetic in a way. Because if people give you that trust, I as a filmmaker don't think that you should misbruik maken van, wat zeg je ook weer?
Abuse.
Abuse that trust. That's very important to me.
But there's another character in this documentary, which is Ernst van der Wetering, maybe the most important Rembrandt expert in the world.
Yeah.
And he is completely antagonistic now to Jan Six. They are opposite each other. And you choose, in fact, for Jan and not for Ernst.
I don't agree.
No? You think they are both
I think
at the same level?
There are many people that say that I chose for Ernst van der Wetering. Because he has this fantastic phrase in the film saying that the paintings of Rembrandt are from all of us, and it shouldn't be about money, and it shouldn't be... So he has a very important role, I would say. And it's not.
Absolutely.
So it's in the eye of the beholder, I think. And I don't think Jan... I mean, there are many people... That's what I like so much, is not to choose one side. And that's a lot of work, not to choose one side. So I think when people see the film, they can judge for themselves if he's a crook or not. Or
so you try to show everyone in a way so that the viewer can decide what is right and what is wrong. You don't take sides yourself.
Of course, you always do. But I think like in a football match, when two parties are really playing well, it's very interesting to watch the game.
Yeah.
But if one is very good and the other is lousy, so I try to make everybody as strong as possible. I show them from their strongest side, and then there is obviously a battle between people in the film. But then I think it's very personal which side you will choose. And there's not one truth.
Shall we have a clip?
Yeah,
Look
that's
at
the trailer.
The trailer. The
Yeah.
trailer. The film is going to have its world premiere next Sunday, and have some more screenings during the festival, and will be in the theaters, in the Dutch theaters, in March. Let's take a look.
I've known dozens of artists, and I would have really liked to meet Rembrandt.
I didn't imagine that I would ever own a painting by Rembrandt.
Ja.
I'm going to suggest that we have a cup of coffee.
Oh mijn god, dit is goed. Dit is echt goed. Het stond gewoon oog in oog met Rembrandt.
How did he do it?
Tjoek, tjoek, tjoek.
Rembrandt was niet gestoord. Die heeft het expres naar buiten laten lopen.
Every time I went to bed, I had Madame on the right and Monsieur on the left.
Als de Rembrandts in deze categorie op de markt komen, betekent dat actie.
Nous aussi, on voulait les deux peintures.
Leggen die Fransen dus ineens 80 miljoen op tafel? Een diplomatieke rel. Nou en? Laat maar komen, joh.
He lets himself go. A free spirit, in fact.
I completely relate to the obsession.
Maar dat je echt iets ontdekt uit het niets. You've got one shot. Dat is zo fantastisch.
We hebben het gekocht. 120. Dat is een goeie, hè?
Nee, dat is helemaal geen Rembrandt.
I really don't get this.
It's deeply emotional.
Het gaat er uiteindelijk om geld.
I'm going to launch the raid on Rembrandt.
List en bedrog in de kunstwereld over een nieuw ontdekte Rembrandt.
Een bedrieger.
Ik had een investeerder die tot miljoenen ging.
It's a constant challenge, being able to hold and carry. Rembrandt held and carried this.
Trust me. Alles of niets. Dit is van Rembrandt. Absoluut.
Hoi.
I went up to the painting, I took it by both sides of the frame, and I kissed her on the lips.
It's quite different from the film about my mother, isn't it?
No, I don't. I'm not sure whether it's that different.
Really?
It's both about obsession.
Ah.
This is obsessive men who are obsessed with owning and touching and carrying and kissing a Rembrandt. And your mother is obsessed with
the war.
The war, with the world, and with her inability to cope with it. And yeah, but the style is completely different. That's true. But both films also, I think, have in common that you are so much in control of the situation. This is the first film you produced yourself.
Yes, it is.
And that's not normal in documentary filmmaking. Mostly you have to have an independent producer next to you. But
well, I did it together with Frank van der Engel from Zeppers Films. So we produced together. I asked him to come in my company to do together to produce the film.
How do you feel about the Rembrandt and the house suites? You see that there is a
no, I love your explanation. I think it's really good. I couldn't do better. No, it's true. It's also a very personal film.
Yeah.
In a way, I think. But this is a baby that was just born, so reflections are coming, but not yet here.
And why are you working so incredibly hard? Because you finished 3 films last year, I think. Maybe
2.
2.
I think. Yeah, and I'm working on 3 more. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I'm really in for a break now. But no, I just have a lot of films I would like to make, and there are even more ideas. And then at a certain moment they take longer than you wish, and then it's coming all together. And so now I'm happy that I finished 2 films, and there are 3 more to finish.
And can you make the films you want to do, or are you just accepting invitations to do something interesting?
Most of the time I only do what I like. So there's moments that I'm asked to do a film, but then if I say yes, it's really a subject that I love to do.
The Rijksmuseum was not your idea originally.
No, that's quite a funny story, maybe, because before I only made films about the war and Jews. The first film, about the Barneveld group, and then the Holocaust experience, which you've seen a part of. And then they asked me to do the Rijksmuseum. And I remember that I thought, no Jews, no war.
Jewish bride, maybe.
Yeah, that's the only. So I thought, what the hell am I going to do there? And it will be boring about the renovation of a museum. So I refused to make it. And then they asked somebody else, and it didn't work out. And then they came back and said again, are you sure you don't want to do it? And then I thought, maybe I should change my attitude and go for the adventure a bit. And after all, it was a good decision, because it kept me from the street until now.
And for instance, last year you made this film about Karl-Heinz Stockhausen event in Holland Festival.
I'm working on that, yes.
They're still working on it.
Yeah, I have to do the edit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But was that also an invitation?
No, that was Oscar van der Kroon, who's sitting here, the commissioning editor of the NTR, who asked me to do this film, and I loved that subject a lot, so I agreed to do it.
Maybe we should spend the last 5 minutes talking about your mother, because I think that's, that is still the most interesting subject.
But maybe somebody wants to ask a question or not.
You
don't like that? No, okay.
No, well, we can do that.
If
are there burning questions?
Two questions about her mom. Did the relationship in you change over the years making the film about her?
Well, I must say I'm working on it for 12 years, so that's hard.
Shall I repeat the question?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
The question is if the relationship with your mother has changed during the making of the film.
But I was saying that I'm working on it for 12 years now, so it changed anyway, because she's getting older now, but I think yes, that we had some intimate talks because of that, and I also started to understand her better by looking at the webcam material, because normally you don't see somebody who's alone in a room. You just don't see it. So I saw many hours, which wasn't easy, I must agree. I shed some tears also, and I had to laugh a lot also, seeing her by her own, which was, of course, a very strange experience.
Confronting.
Confronting is the word, yes. Right.
And my second question, I missed, is the film already released while your mother is still here with us? Or do you wait until...
I'm afraid that I cannot make the film I want to make if she has to agree upon it, to be very honest.
Yeah.
I think then I have to do so many compromises that it couldn't be my film anymore. It will be her film about her. And I think this is still a very touchy point. I mean, we're still talking. She just wrote me an email saying we have to talk about it. So we're not done yet.
Great. But, I mean, it can wait.
Well, we don't know how old she will get, of course.
Any other questions? How do you decide when you will film?
Well, what we did actually was that I talked things over with her a lot. So we talked things over, and then we decided we should come by with the camera. But at a certain point, I bought a camera myself. Now, I won the prize of IDFA with my new Rijksmuseum, and it was about 5,000 euros. And I thought, let's buy a camera so I can film my mother. So I bought a camera which wasn't too complicated to film with. And then I went myself to film. And then what happened actually was that most of the time when I started filming, she was a bit edgy and she didn't like it sometimes. And she was also saying that I didn't ask the right questions and things. She was very critical on me.
Yeah, she started taking over the direction.
Absolutely, immediately. So what I did was I placed the camera on a tripod and I said, Mom, I'm going to buy cigarettes. And then I went off. And the camera kept turning. And then later I thought, when I was home, I looked at it and I was thinking, wow, it's actually much better than when I interview her or when I'm, trying to direct this film. So the best thing was and that's how eventually we got to this webcam idea as well.
Well, it's the extreme form of fly on the wall. You can get more fly on the wall than with a webcam. On the other hand, you are going to edit it.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, that's very difficult. But we now are very far with the film. I think it's almost there.
I have a very difficult question, maybe the last one. What is she afraid of? Why doesn't she go out? What's the fear?
That's a very analytical question. You should ask her, in fact. But I think that she had a moment of great fear when she was once in a restaurant. She was very young, and she fainted. And that moment made her very scared.
That was before the war?
No, that was after the war. Mm-hmm. But how she explains it to me is that during the war, she comes from a very protected family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And during the war, everything was so insecure for her. She was so, her father and brother were killed in Auschwitz, so she wasn't of course, with her family. And she, of course, she went from camp, first in the castle and then to both the camps. And that really gave her that feeling of insecurity, of not feeling secure. She has never felt secure anymore after the war. I think that's the way to explain it. That was so deep, that feeling of not knowing where you're going to. All the insecurities, of course.
Displacedness, yeah.
Exactly. And there are many people that survive camps and even worse camps that don't have that. But for my mother, somehow that went wrong.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
The thing that you're telling now about what you think is the cause of the fear, is it also a thing that you want her to talk about in the film, or do you want to show it maybe in a more indirect way, more visually maybe?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, it's if you see the opening of the film, for example, you see a railway, and there she's telling about nightmares she has, and they're coming back sometimes every week. And she dreams she's somewhere outside her house, and she can't find a way to come back to the house. Or she lost her key, she doesn't know where her car is. There's a huge water between the house and where she is. So she has herself, she's a very verbal person. She can articulate very well. So she explains this nightmare, and you see only the train, the railway, and the train going. And that's Danielle found this image with her nightmare, who is not with us anymore, an editor. And I think that's the way we want to make the film. That it's not, I hope I'm answering your question, but it's not like it is poetical, I think.
Isn't it very difficult for you that now when you have to present your Rembrandt film, you would really like to talk about the other film?
No, that's so good, because
you have a way to...
You always have that moment...
Diversion.
And you have the moment that your film is ready, and then, okay, you have your premiere, and then it's over. And now that's always the moment that I'm starting to think about the other films, because it's the way you go on, isn't it?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you too.